Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Amanda, and this is a vlog of my late autism and ADHD diagnosis. And my goal is to keep this video short tonight. We'll see. You know how I go once I start rambling. But I kind of just wanted to give a little update. I am a little over a year post-diagnosis of getting diagnosed with autism and ADHD, as many of y'all know. And I don't know if I've mentioned CPTSD on this channel. I know I've started talking a little bit about it, like on Threads and maybe on TikTok. But it's very common for late diagnosed autistic people to also be diagnosed with CPTSD. And at first, I was like, okay, that's interesting. That's not me. I didn't have trauma. I didn't have traumatic childhood, but I'm learning more about it and learning what unmasking and what it means to be late diagnosed autistic. Honestly, if you go back to this video up here where it's like, I'm autistic, yay. And I'm very glad that I got diagnosed autistic. I am a huge proponent that people find out if they're autistic, no matter what their age. Some circumstances may not make it where it's something that you should pursue. If you're just not interested and you're like, oh, I might be autistic, but honestly, I don't really care, then well, whatever, that's fine. But for most people, I think it brings a lot of unanswered questions to the forefront. And when the day that I got my autistic diagnosis, at that point, I had already kind of been wondering for a couple months. From my questioning to my actual diagnosis was way shorter than most people. A lot of people have a huge wait list, like 6 months to a year before they get evaluated. I got in very, very, very quickly. It was highly unusual, but it was still long enough that by the time I got my official diagnosis, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm not just making stuff up. I actually am autistic, and it felt like a really big relief. I also thought that I would be like, okay, I'm autistic. That's awesome. And then continue on with my life like nothing changed because I've always been autistic. That's not what happened. I've mentioned on here a lot that over the next few months, I found myself crying all the time, randomly in the car, sitting in my closet floor, cooking dinner, in the shower, like random times some thought would hit me and I would just burst into tears and just start crying. And I was processing just what it meant to be late diagnosed versus being if I had been diagnosed earlier in life. And that gets a little complicated because if I had been diagnosed in the 80s and 90s, the way the 80s and 90s were, I probably would have had to go through ABA therapy because I did have a very caring mom who wanted the best for us. And she would have, at that time, the best was considered ABA. So that's what she would have done, most likely, right? An ABA is been found out to be very traumatic. Most autistic people who are my age, who got diagnosed in the 80s and 90s, who had to go through ABA, are processing trauma from going to ABA. But if I had gotten diagnosed in the 80s and 90s, and it was a whole different timeline, and autism was more well understood and more accepting, and all of that, like the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, if the world had been perfect, then knowing that I was autistic earlier on would have been so helpful. And so you process different kind of timelines in your head. Like, what if I had been diagnosed and autism was well known and accepted? Which, one can wish, right? What if I'd been diagnosed earlier and had to do ABA? What if I'd been diagnosed and nothing else had changed except that I would have known how to accommodate myself, or would have understood why people treated me the way that they did? So all of this processing has been a super duper emotional roller coaster. And then the more I'm online with other autistic people and hearing their stories, and then ones who are also diagnosed with CPTSD, I'm like, am I processing trauma? I didn't think I had a traumatic childhood. I had a very pretty normal childhood. My parents did get divorced between third and fourth grade, but other than that, I had a fairly stable home. We moved a couple times, but not anything excessive. I always had food on the table. I had clothes to wear. There was never any physical or emotional abuse. Like, I had a really average childhood, a good one, except being undiagnosed autistic. And so there's struggles within that just naturally happen, and cause their own sort of trauma that I'm processing. And so I now realizing that, oh, I may have not had a traumatic event or traumatic, like abusive parenting, or, something that happened that was an incident of trauma, but just being undiagnosed is repetitive trauma over a lifetime, because people are treating you like you have a neurotypical brain, and they're expecting you to behave and act like you're neurotypical. So your body is kind of constant stress response, masking because you aren't neurotypical, you are autistic, and our brains process differently. And so that whole metaphor of a square peg for a round hole, or does it go the other way? I don't remember. Just trying to force yourself, yeah, like a square, trying to force myself into a round hole, and it's just not going to fit. And so that does cause repetitive trauma. So today in my therapy session, I brought it up with my therapist. I'm like, you know, talking about, oh, sorry, my nose is itching. Talking about CPTSD, and we talked a little bit about internalized ableism too, and we talked about self-diagnoses. And I said, while I support self-diagnosis in the autism community, I also really, for myself, needed that external validation. And the same thing with CPTSD. I told her I've kind of been talking, like, I feel like I might have CPTSD, um, on social media a little bit, but I really would like to learn more and see if it is an actual diagnosis, just because I don't want to add more letters to the into my we did a TikTok kind of funny thing that was, if you added all your diagnoses to the end of your name, like doctors do, um, what would yours be? And I'm like, Amanda, ASD, um, sorry, forgot everything. ASD, ADHD, AFONT for aphantasia, and SDAM, severely deficient autobiographical memory. And then now I might have CPTSD too. But the thing is, the more that we learn about our brains, the more we learn about ourselves, the more we can move forward without continuing the cycle of trauma and stress, which leads to shorter lives and all of that, right? So I think if you're processing trauma and you're trying to get to a healthier, happier place, you have to name it first. You have to have a name for what you're trying to work through. And so we're going to spend the next couple sessions. I don't know if she can officially diagnose, but she can definitely work through her books and at least give me what some people call a soft diagnosis, where it's not official, but it is thorough, done with the help of a medical professional. So I'm going to kind of dig in and see if CPTSD is a fit. And in one way, it kind of doesn't matter. That's the thing, like for self-diagnosing autism too, it's like the diagnosis doesn't really matter if the symptoms all fit. the traits, and so, but again, naming it, saying, yeah, I did have trauma. One of the things that, it's like a triggering event and causing stress over and over and over. And I've talked about it a couple times on the channel, is gift giving and receiving causes me a lot of stress. A lot of it has to, there's another set of initials for you: PDA, pathological demand avoidance, autism. Gift giving and receiving creates a demand response in my system. Often it will trigger like the flight or freeze response. When I have to give someone gifts, I will just like freeze, like, 'cause I don't know what to get them. I don't have any ideas in my head. It's just scary. And it feels really scary. Or I will fight, and not fight, flight, and just like ignore the thing. Like, for instance, I had a friend whose mom passed away, and I wanted to get her some flowers and, like, acknowledge it. And I just could not do it. My brain, like, could not do it. And I felt really bad about that because I know it's like kind of the appropriate thing to do. But the pathological demand avoidance triggered that stress response, and I just could not have the executive functioning to follow through to getting her flowers. And it's frustrating. And I don't know, that friendship hasn't really continued on, and I don't know if that's a contributing factor to it. It might be. I tried to show up for her in other ways after her mom passed, but it just, um, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, that's another tangent. Um, anyway, so because this is my vlog about the process, and because I am starting to wonder if I fit the diagnostic criteria for having CPTSD, I figured I would do an update video because, I did one called Am I Autistic? And then I did one that says I am autistic. Um, and it's just an ongoing journey, and people are going to be on different routes. And like my son, when he got diagnosed autistic ADHD, he later got OCD added to his diagnosis. So we're all different. Trying to think if there's anything else that I want to add. Nope, I'm going to keep this under 15 minutes this time, guys. Oh my gosh, it's a miracle. The lighting's kind of bad in here tonight. I apologize for that. But I'm filming in the evening, and I'm going to edit and then schedule it to post in the morning. So that's kind of why the light's bad, because I don't have any natural light in here tonight. So I share all of this with y'all too, because I know even though we are all on different journeys, some of the things that I share kind of help other people sort out different talking points or directions, or might spark an idea for their own journey. So until the next one, bye.